police station. This act of authorised vandalism naturally caused ructions with the arcade owners, but Steine was above such concerns. If there was one thing about post-war Britain he abominated, it was the systematic inculcation of disrespect for the appointed guardians of the public. Yes, Inspector Steine, formerly of the City of London Constabulary, had arrived in Brighton with a mission. Of police corruption there would be no more. Of violent gangs with flick knives there would be no more. Of mispronouncing his name there would be no more. And of laughing policemen, well, within days there was nothing remaining of that ghoulish marionette division, beyond piles of ash and melted plastic with blackened springs and levers sticking out. A little film was made by Pathé News, The Bonfire of the Effigies. This rare and disturbing newsreel is honestly worth watching. It substantiates the legend that when the last and greatest Brighton laughing policeman was put to the flame, its body thrashed, it stopped laughing, and when it fell forward, the flames literally wiped the smile from off its face. Now, to return to the events of Middle Street. While it truly was commonplace for people to trip over lifeless villains in Brighton at this time, the corpse discovered on the 9th of June 1951 was special for two reasons. First, the dead man had not been sliced, stabbed, skewered, mutilated, or otherwise dispatched with a blade. He had been shot, twice, from behind. Second, he was no expendable journeyman gangster. He was Frankie G, a junior member of the Jovody family, and therefore ranked as underworld aristocracy. The Jovodys owned various legitimate restaurants in the town, while also running very lucrative extortion and gambling rackets, and the teenaged Frankie G was the apple of their collective eye. An ambitious, illiterate, and cocky boy, he performed his hoodlum work with a passion, especially when it came to threatening people or roughing them up. Frankie's doting parents regarded him as a trainee criminal psychopath of pleasing potential, and his death at such a tender age, 16, was devastating. For his next birthday, they had planned to give him Worthing. "Oh, Frankie G, my Frankie G!" each of them wailed, when they were brought the news in their modest flat upstairs from their old Neapolitan restaurant in Preston Street. They were so upset that they briefly stopped counting the heaps of notes, coins, and IOUs that had been delivered by henchmen to their drop box overnight. "Mama!" wailed Papa. "Papa!" wailed Mama. Young Frankie had been a model son. He had loved his mama's cooking. He had loved his hokey-pokey ice cream. He had loved cutting people's thumbs off. He had seen Brighton rock 5 times at an impressionable age. Naturally, the Jovody family's thoughts turned swiftly to revenge. But who had murdered Frankie G? The fact of his being shot contained no clue. Whereas 6 months before, guns had been a rarity in the town, casino owner Fat Victor being the only hood to flash one around, now they were everywhere. Everyone was packing. When Frankie G's body was discovered in Middle Street, his own gun was clamped in his cold, dead hand, apparently unfired. The suspect pool was limited, however, because only 3 gangs operated in town. The Jovody family, based on the seafront, Fat Victor's crew, based at the casino, and the more nebulous satellite gang of a London outfit, supposedly led by the legendarily unstable and sadistic Terence Chambers. Not so easy to pinpoint a base for this particular gang on account of the nebulousness. Mama and Papa Jovody wasted no time jumping to the obvious conclusion. "Those casino boys done this to my Frankie," wailed Mama Jovody. "They pay for this, Mama," said Papa, grimly. But was it the case that Fat Victor had thrown down this suicidal gauntlet to the Jovodys? In the few short hours it took for the bloody Middle Street Massacre to be organised and take place on that fateful Saturday, it now appears, with hindsight, that none of the participants stood back from events sufficiently to ask the right questions. No one asked, for example, just who would benefit from the Italians and the casino boys eliminating each other in a hail of bullets. Was some nebulous third party possibly behind it? Had some nebulous third party also been behind the sudden proliferation of firearms in the first place? When the film of the Middle Street Massacre came to be made, the lovely John Gregson was cast in the lead role. The inspector was portrayed as a plainclothes man, which in fact he never was, but there was no way you could dress Gregson in police